Let's call this Ethics and Elections Committee to order. Today is Friday, January 12th. It's about 2:37 p.m. And let's go around and introduce ourselves. We'll start with Mr. Trainee.
Big Trainee Assembly.
Amy Stromberg. Barbara Jones.
Dennis Wheeler.
Dean Gates.
Forrest Dunbar.
And I'm Chair Pete Peterson. Let's go to new business, and we'll call on Carolyn Hall to give us some communication plan.
Do you want to pull a chair up there, Carolyn? You can.
So here's the latest version of the communications plan.
Is this the same one that was sent out last evening?
Very similar, but I did make some changes this morning. So do you have another one needed?
If you don't, it's okay if I don't have one.
Okay.
If you need it back.
I think we're going to be all right.
Why don't you hang on to it in case Mr. Crawford needs it?
So the goals that the clerk's office has identified as part of the communications plan. Shall I wait for Barbara?
Where did she go?
I wasn't paying attention, sorry.
She walked in. Here she comes.
There she is.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, you may begin.
Thank you. So for the goals that the clerk's office has identified as being focal points of the communications plan, it's that voting in elections is important. It's important to let voters know that vote by mail is coming because it's hoping to increase voter turnout, be a more efficient use of community resources, and improve election administration. It's important to let everybody know so as to mitigate voter confusion on election day, so they aren't showing up to their polling locations mistakenly. Got to let voters know how to vote, let them know about the voting-related deadlines, that vote by mail is safe, secure, and confidential, and that trusted resources are available at the clerk's office website.
Lunch has been served. Yeah. Remind me.
So, as part of trying to direct people to the appropriate resources online, we've identified a brief list of shortened URLs that are listed here, and I'm sure we'll have additional ones as we continue to maintain the website and improve our information that is listed there.
You know, those are really important. I remember a year or so ago when we were updating the Title 28, and Mr. Weddleton commented about the website address. And you know, it was muni.org.elections/assembly/department. You know, it took up like 2 lines, and no one can find it. So this is really a good plan to shorten these URLs so that all of you can tell people it's I'm still used to it's muni.org/elections, it's muni.org/elections FAQs. You know, you can get your people to this information really quickly and easily. So thanks for identifying this as a problem and taking care of it, Carolyn.
It looks a lot cleaner on the publications as well, the handouts that we're sharing with everybody. Target audiences are, of course, every qualified registered voter in Anchorage, and then subset target audiences are those who vote regularly in local elections and those who don't typically vote in local elections. So there are 2 different strategies associated with that. And then we've also identified that senior citizens consume information differently than the youth. And so we're targeting our strategy accordingly to make sure that we're hitting those demographics. And then beyond that, for those in other populations, we're utilizing our stakeholders group in order to target their constituencies with helping us share and spread that we're now vote by mail. The next section here is the stakeholder group, which I don't think I need to go into great detail because it's something that's been around for quite a while, and we have a list of some of the stakeholders involved there. And we expect that group to grow as we get closer to the election. Our message consists of why vote in local elections, why did Anchorage switch to vote by mail, what is vote by mail, how do I vote by mail, and how do I update my voter registration, what are the deadlines.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry. I can take another chair.
Nope. Amy's getting a chair for Eric.
Croft has joined us. Just finished a work session downstairs. It was standing room only.
And I'll stand room only for a little while longer.
Deadlines are important, and then when can I vote? The 5 broad messages that we're planning to communicate starts with why. And this one is the most important one because the clerk's office believes that that is the way that we can acutely engage with our audience. In order to communicate why citizens should take an interest in voting, the communication strategy must start with why. The answer to why is it important to vote will establish a human connection and experience between the stakeholder and his or her audience. That connection is the creation of an emotional tie that will resonate with an engaged audience. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. The why becomes an experience for an audience to be more interested in learning details about a new voting method. And essentially what this is doing is it's trying to create this emotional human connection as far as like why I choose to vote and why Barbara chooses to vote, why Mr. Peterson chooses to vote. And it's different for everybody. And if we can start the conversation with trying to make this connection on a human level with our community members, then all of a sudden they start becoming more engaged and more receptive to receiving our what message and our how message.
So Carolyn, can I give an example today? So I did the presentation today at the chamber. And so one of the things that I said in my presentation was what I like about Anchorage. And I love lots of things about Anchorage, but mostly I really like the people. And so then when anybody asked me a question, they had to say what they liked about Anchorage. And so, Mr. Trainee, I'm going to pick on you. So, what do you like about Anchorage?
Wonderful place to raise children.
So, at the end of the presentation, what we're going to say is, that's why I vote. I vote because I love Anchorage and I love this community and these people. And Mr. Trainee, it's a great place to raise children. I agree with you. That's why you should vote.
Good.
So that's part of what we're trying to do with the why is voting important to you. And we think that's a different message than what we've done before. But we have low voter turnout, and we need to address low voter turnout and say why you should be voting to begin with, and then why vote by mail makes that easier. And anyway, I think Carolyn and I have been working on this, and I think it's a great new strategy. It's a little bit different, but I think we'll get there.
And I think it's important to be casual too and just let people in. And what I was explaining to Barbara this morning is just speak with your heart, and that's what's important, because if we're just coming off as talking heads of the municipal clerk's office, that doesn't connect with many people at all. It doesn't resonate. And so if we can create this moment, then all of a sudden the spark, just comes to life and you can have a more productive dialogue. So once that is established, that's when you can start getting into the what message and the how. And the slogan vote by mail is as easy as 1, 2, 3 that is one message. As far as the how, updating voter registration, that was part of our effort with the 90-day mailer, the address verification mailer. The deadlines, March 4th to register to vote and returning your ballot by April 3rd. And of course the message that vote by mail is secure, it will improve voter turnout, and it'll be a more efficient use of community resources. And then, of course, this is really important, all of our messaging about voting and vote by mail will remain nonpartisan. Our methods identified are paid media, and that includes television airtime, radio airtime, digital, the mailer that was sent in November, which was the signature verification mailer, the mailer that just went out this week, which is the address verification mailer, and the League of Women Voters ballot review, which will be mailed out around the same time that the ballot packages are mailed out on March 13th. After that, there's the earned media, and this is where we can identify press coverage opportunities, such as with the mock election. We had 2 of the
I'm
or-
sorry, can I ask something? The League of Women Voters ballot review is mailed right before the ballot itself was mailed, is that right? What's the time gap between them? I'm still curious.
Well, we have a contract with the League of Women Voters, so we decide when they mail it. And our expectation is that the ballots are going to be mailed on March 13th. So I would like the League of Women Voters ballot review to be mailed at least by the 12th, so that, you know, we don't want people to have their ballot at home without the ballot review.
I just happened to think we got those cards in the mail 2 days ago. Have we got a big batch of them returned to sender at all, or do we have a number, an estimate of how many that is?
Thousands,
Thousands.
But tens of thousands?
not tens of thousands.
So we sent out, what, 210,000 or something?
208,000,
208,000.
yeah.
If it's really just a few thousand, or even though maybe it's like 8,000 or 9,000, that's a good result for us.
Was it 250 plus per tray?
Yeah, and there's,
Times 13, 14 trays as of yesterday.
As of yesterday, okay.
yeah.
So we're like between 3,000 and 4,000.
Well, the state's not purged their voter rolls in years, and that's what I'm following. People that don't live here anymore
I
are still
mean,
registered.
if it ends up being 5,000 or even 10,000 out of 208,000, that's a really good result.
And it's great, because if on the postcard, and some of you already know this, on the back of the postcard, the state put a
Well, we
barcode.
put for the state. We did the work for the state.
Right.
Yeah.
But the important thing is, RDI did do the work for the state, but they asked. And so now, the state is willing to scan all of those barcodes that we got back on all of the returns and designate them as undeliverable. So that means, the good news is that means that we're not going to be mailing ballot packages to those 8,000 people. So we're saving money.
Well-
The postcard can be forwarded. Is there any way to know how many of them got forwarded to the addressee? I mean, I wouldn't think there is, but that's a consideration because the ballot package itself won't be forwarded, right? So I'm really curious if you have an estimate about that.
We'll have a count because we have some return cards that tell us what that new address
Yeah.
is, if it was forwardable.
Yeah.
The thousands that I'm talking about, there was an expired forwarding, there was no forwarding, but we do have, and I don't know what the count is on how many cards we have that gave us the new address. But the ones I looked through, by and large, they're all out of state, so the assumption is that, this isn't 100%, but the assumption is that the vast majority of these people have relocated out of state and are no longer eligible.
Okay, great, you continue.
The earned media press coverage opportunities are with press releases. For example, with the mock election, on the mock election day, we had 2 television stations stop by to do stories. And just last week, or was it this week? It's been a long week. Barbara was invited into the KTVA studios for the 6:30 show to talk about the mailer that went out. So those are identified means of earned media. Boosted Facebook post opportunities are another one, as well as utilizing Nextdoor. And the municipality has just given myself and one of our other colleagues in the clerk's office the credentials necessary to post on Nextdoor coming from the municipality. So it'll look official and will come from the official municipality account. I've included our social media platforms, and I've identified other digital platforms that we can utilize to share our content and our message. Organizing opportunities and in-person events. Like Barbara mentioned, she spoke earlier this afternoon at a chamber event. So we are continuing to receive requests and identify others that we would like to appear at. Barbara, Dennis, and or myself to attend. There's also community councils and the Federation of Community Councils. We're going to be posting information at all municipality offices. And we are going to be reaching out to the legislative caucus, the English Legislative Caucus, on Monday, requesting that they include VOPA by mail information in their opening week newsletter. There's also radio appearances and, like I said, TV appearances that we can identify to hopefully go on and discuss with hosts about vote by mail. And of course, the op-eds, editorial boards, and getting in touch with newsroom managers, and TV station general managers to explain, vote by mail and to see ways that they can maybe collaborate with us to help share the message. Next is the timeline. We're looking at January and February of laying the groundwork with grassroots organizing. And that includes a couple of high points, which is filing for office. By the end of January, we want to be distributing posters and flyers to all municipal offices. Another high point is filing for office closes at 5 o'clock on February 2nd. And then continuing the effort, I've been receiving a number of phone calls and communications from community council presidents, the Anchorage Parks Foundation, DHHS, where they are looking to collaborate and have us present for their staff members or to share with them some flyers and brochures. So all of that has been taking place this last couple of weeks, and I expect it to ramp up, especially with the group presentation submission form that was shared last week in a press release, and then also on Nextdoor earlier this week. February and March, it's to continue the push of voter registration and identifying, counting down the days to voter registration deadline, as well as 1 month until the ballots are mailed. So it's like using these milestone moments to identify and keep, ramping up our message to the community. We're hoping to place one of our flyers in the MOA utility bills. We're going to reach out to ASD to see about providing flyers to every student for them to take home and share with their parents. We also want to hang posters and have brochures available in all of the schools.
One additional thing I think is important to communicate through the schools, because many of the polling locations have been located in schools, and so some people are used to going and dropping their kids off at school and voting at that same time, and so they have to realize that they're not going to be able to do that anymore.
Exactly.
So,
And that is another effort that we are planning to do, is to make sure that posters are hung and clearly visible at all 122 polling locations to let people know that it is no longer a place to cast the ballot, and we're going to identify the closest 2 drop-box locations. So if they're in that situation, they can go straight to it or file that in the memory for when the time comes for them to cast the ballot. Thank you.
thank you.
Let's see, League of Women Voters is going to be assisting us with distributing election materials to the members of the Anchorage School District Building Representatives Group, and they've requested 200 flyers and 3,000 vote-by-mail trifold brochures. So what that will do is it will be distributed to all the building representatives. They'll take those materials back to their buildings and then distribute them from there. March 4th is the last day to register to vote. And then into March and April, things are really ramped up as far as how do I vote? How does the system work? General packages of mail and drop boxes are open on the 13th. Accessible vote centers open on the 26th. And then the last days of election are March 30th to April 3rd.
Can I ask a question here? Do we have enough staff to get all the drop boxes out in one day?
To do the Dropbox pickup?
No, to
Drop them off
locate
where they
them
belong.
all over town. I mean, is that going to take a couple days?
Well, it'll probably take like a week.
Okay.
So Amy Solberg is here because Amy is our new election assistant. I think most of you know that Lisa Schlusner is the acting clerk while I'm working on the election. And Lisa and I were chatting, and we've hired Cassie Marlovitz in the clerk's office, and Lisa said, I bet you could use Amy. And so I asked Amy, and she agreed to come down and work in the elections. And I'll just tell you how amazing it is. I said, oh, Amy, we have a committee meeting today. Can you get ready for that? Can you get the agenda done? She knows where the agendas are. She did the agenda. She had everything set up for us. So it's really a big relief to have somebody that I don't have to show how to open the computer. And what else did you do for me today that I asked you to do?
Well, the easy one was Claire was on the phone and ballot props. Somebody asked her about the ballot prop and I showed her how to find it.
She knows what an AO is that's been introduced as a ballot prop. She's saving all of those for the ballot and making a mock-up for us. So it's just really nice having someone. So Amy is the person that is arranging for the movers to come, and it's Smithson and Sons who the Muni has a contract with. And Smithson and Sons is, a big company that moves heavy equipment. They'll come and pick up all 12 drop boxes, and Amy's got a map for them and arrangements, and she'll make sure that they all get placed in the right locations.
Great. Mr. Dunbar?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a couple of questions on page 6 when you're talking about using radio and digital. You said the TSAs begin in January or February. Do you have a more solid date of when you're going to start running digital ads?
Digital ads, at this moment, no. Charles Boyle is helping me with that part of it, and I imagine that we'll be starting it shortly after the 32nd is done. The 32nd should be finished as soon as that logo is complete, and I believe it will air on Alaska Public Radio starting next week.
So so you're saying you have the same PSA for both the video and the audio?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. And so follow up to that, you mentioned radio here. Are you guys going to do any Pandora ads?
No?
So that I've found is pretty effective. So you run a radio ad on Pandora.
Pandora?
Pandora is a music streaming service
Really?
that is, I'm not sure if you can do it on Spotify as well, but I know you can do it on Pandora. So people are listening to their playlist, and then it'll come up just like a radio ad would. Yeah. And I find that to be way more people listen to Pandora than I expect. is what I'm thinking.
Good.
Great. Thank
Mr.
you.
Trainee?
KSKA runs candidates forum about a week before the election. Are you planning on showing up there and taking a few minutes to get the message out during the KSKA briefing?
I think that is an excellent idea. And
Okay.
we'll look at
I
that.
just want to make sure you don't miss that.
Thank you.
Because a lot of people in Anchorage listen to KSKA on TV to see who they want to vote for. If we have your spot there, whatever, it'll help us.
Okay.
I've been told that maybe 100 people watch those running programs besides your relatives, but I think it might be more than that. So it's hard to tell.
It'll be several hundred.
Yeah. But yeah, if one person sees it that didn't know about it, that's one more person that knows. So anyway, continue.
Mr. Chairman,
Oh,
can I ask
you
a
have an
question?
additional question?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mr. Dunbar.
So, I try not to analogize this too closely to an old political campaign because it is different in some ways. But when one of us is running as a candidate, there are sort of two different things we're trying to do. The first is increase our name recognition so they know who we are, and the second is to persuade them to actually vote for us. And if I was to kind of make that analogy, what percent of people in Anchorage do you think right now, or what percent would you estimate, know that we're going to an all vote by mail election?
That's a great question.
Probably less than half.
Well, so I'll tell you, it's kind of interesting. If I talked about our super voters,
Yeah.
let's say, and we had 35% in the last mayoral election.
Yep.
We had a tour that was this week, with the Olay group, and there were 26 people there from the Olay group. All of them knew about it.
I'm sorry, what's the Olay group?
Older Learners Experience or something. Olay, it's a program at UAA where retired people take a bunch of classes they pay a bunch of money and then they just get all the classes they want.
They're not English second language learners, are they?
No, when I ask them, what do you like about voting? I would say 75% of them said they were super voters.
No.
So I called them the super group. So no, they're not. There may have been some in the group, but it's your neighbors and our friends. And but it was just amazing because most of them did know about it.
Yeah.
So, so I think it's probably maybe a little we're getting about close to half of that group. You know, so I think about half of the people that regularly vote definitely know that it's vote by mail. But I have no numbers for that at all. That is only anecdotal.
Well, the reason I asked is because there are different, as you know, there are different strategies for those two different things. And if we want to get really in depth and sort of make the persuasion argument of here's how you actually do it and why you should, then that requires some of the things you're talking about here, some of the in-depth discussion and some of the media coverage. But if you are just trying to get people to sort of that top level, just know that it's coming, then you do things that are much more sort of, they're usually a lot cheaper and they're more basic. And so like the one thing here that I'm not sure if it's a good idea, but the best way to increase name recognition in my experience are the big signs on the sides of the road.
Oh, okay.
4x8s?
4x8s. And
Okay.
I know, Pete, you've had more experience with yard signs, but, you know, if you were to put up a few strategic 4x8s that just said, vote by mail, you know, April 3rd, 1, 2, 3, you would get tens of thousands of cards every day. But that's a waste of money if you think you already have a relatively high percentage of people that at least know that it's coming.
So out of 218,000 registered voters,
Yeah.
I'm saying you have about 50% of the usual. So I'm thinking we're maybe at like about 30 or 40,000 know that it's coming. So yeah, I think we've got a long ways to go, and I think that's a great idea. Do you know how expensive it is?
They're about $200 all in. So, I mean, that's there with the wood and
Not the
double-sided
location,
sign.
just the sign.
Yeah, well, the location should be free. I mean, we can help you find, like, Arby's will let you put one out there for free, for example. And you just have to talk to the Nobar family. You can be a jerk and just put it up regardless. But anyway,
I think 200 is a lowball estimate, but
although I think we'd be violating our own sign ordinance.
Yeah, we
might have
probably
to
don't want to
apply
do
for
that.
permits from ourselves.
But they are, I mean, 4x8 signs are remarkably effective at increasing name recognition. I don't know if any of my other people who have run a bunch of campaigns have other thoughts on best ways to do the basic, the very basic.
I actually have never had a 4x8 sign, and I won a couple elections.
Yeah, but you went door to door, I mean, very aggressively, and you can't do that for everybody.
But that's true. I actually would take the money instead of investing in, they usually want to sell you at least 10 of those 4x8s.
Yeah.
So I thought ads on cable TV, 30-second ads were about $15 each if you buy, you know, a couple $1,000s worth of them.
Yeah.
So I thought those, I could increase my reach on cable TV to different target demographics,
Yeah.
rather than just stick it out there on signs along the road.
So we don't need to target this really. I mean, that's the other thing is we're trying to reach the whole
Right.
city.
Right.
I think you're right on, if it's a simple name recognition or that it's out there, it's not an in-depth message at all, it is recognition, then buses and 4x8s are the most effective way of just getting a name or a concept out. They don't sell any depth, but they do get notice.
So if we decide we want to put signs on buses, do we have to pay for that, or since
That's an interesting question.
we have the transportation system that we own it ourselves, do we get a deal on that? or-
Well, Carolyn has some information for you
Oh,
about that.
good.
On buses.
So Amy Kaufman in the mayor's office is helping us facilitate getting signage inside the buses on the back side of where the driver sits, as well as accompanying that with a place to have some brochures, so that as people are coming and going, they can just grab one.
That's good, but that's not what we're talking about.
You're talking about the
We're
exterior.
talking about the
Yeah,
exterior.
bus.
That is a contractor, and that's at a cost.
But when my daughter, her school was doing a thing on some public service project, he had space and it was free.
Ooh. Do you
Because
want
it
to
was a
talk
public
to?
service thing.
Okay.
And so it's possible. I don't know if that's still the case now, but
They
it's possible.
may do X percent of public service per year, or
If it-
whatever.
It's basically, if it's not pre-booked for somebody who's paying, I think he may give you a little bit of time on a
And
bus
if
or
you'd like
two.
to keep the contract.
But we'll coordinate that with the mayor's office. They were helping us with the buses.
Pete?
Yeah, I seem to remember an email with the logo, the vote by mail logo, that candidates or, I guess, campaigns could use the vote by mail logo on their campaign materials. Is that right? And I guess their yard signs and all that could have vote by mail logo at least on the campaign
So
signs.
candidates, it's
Maybe
legal
for
for,
proposition campaigns.
it's legal for candidates to use the vote by mail.
Nope,
I didn't think it was.
it's free.
That's legal.
Yeah.
Sure, it's
Legally.
legal. I don't think
It
so.
is legal.
I don't think
Not
you need a legal barrier.
It's not illegal, it's legal.
Yeah.
It's legal.
It is legal, okay. We don't have to ask for specific.
They could do it. I would think that relatively,
Could
if we were
encourage them.
if we were to give them stickers, I think some of them would put it on, or there are things you can staple to signs, that I think they would do it. But I think candidates are unlikely to do it themselves, because every color you add to a sign adds price, and typically. And so by adding that yellow, splash of yellow could significantly increase the cost of the sign.
But typically, you stick those yard signs out, and once they're out there for a few weeks, people don't notice them as
Right,
much
so you go
anymore.
put another
So
thing on top of
the week or
Yeah.
10 days before the election, you go around, you put something else on there that's going to attract their eye.
NRA approved.
It's a balloon, or it's something you staple on there, or whatever.
Is vote by mail NRA approved? That would
Yeah.
help. Really
I don't
large
know.
card would help.
I'm NRA approved, but
Interesting.
All right.
All right, let's keep moving forward. We got about 20 minutes left here. Oh, Mr. Tracy.
so-
Barbara, in some jurisdictions, they've rented out the back of police cars for advertising, because they're always out in the street. We could get a police department, have the sticker put on the back of their cars, because they're all over town,
That's an interesting idea.
you know? I'm just telling you that some jurisdictions have actually rented out the back of police cars. I'm not saying doing that here, but it's an idea to put on a police car.
okay, we'll add it to our list of ideas.
Figure out how expensive it might be, but, plus, we'd have to talk to APD and see if
Yeah.
they'd like to be involved like that. We can encourage them. We could. Okay, what do you have next?
I have one more question, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Joan.
Mr. Dunbar, could you please let us know who does these types of signs? so that-
Roscoe's.
Okay, thank
It's
you.
whatever, it's Roscoe's signs is what everybody uses.
Okay.
They can do them in short order. They run about $200, about $100 last time I looked for buying a sign.
And then if you do decide to go that route, let me know, or, I mean, I'm sure Dick has too, but building those signs is actually harder than you might think, and we all have friends that know how to do it, and we'll go out and put them up.
Actually, I'd encourage the fire department, people do, they do it for, they have
I have
crews.
I have a friend, that's a retired carpenter that does it, who I'm sure you know, that does it for me.
But if we can encourage the fire department to do it, that wouldn't cost us.
So how does the fire department get the wood to build the signs?
You have to buy the wood, so we have to
Okay.
buy the wood, the nails,
But
and
they have
the
extra time, so
material.
it's not a matter of having to allocate the time. It's just, we buy the materials, they
Okay.
put it together.
All right. We got plenty of room at the election center.
We actually do.
Yeah, actually, that's good. And yeah,
That's good
and
when
then
you think
talk
ahead
to,
like that.
again, if you do this route, talk to us about where the sign locations are. And then we'll have to talk about the fact that we're violating the sign ordinance.
Well, can we do that without violating the sign ordinance?
I've heard conflicting reports on that, and whether or not our sign ordinance is actually like.
We just choose to ignore it in this case, Barbara.
Do you mean to
And
amend
the
it?
assembly could vote ourselves an exemption for a month.
Amend the sign ordinance.
I'm not gonna address it, somebody's gonna do it.
Right.
Okay, I'm just throwing ideas out there.
You know?
Okay.
Anything else before we proceed?
Teamsters has great locations along Northern Lights I could put one up at. IB Dibba's got a great one on Denali Street we could put one up at.
Yep, there are lots of good ones.
Continue.
Well, that pretty much wraps up. The last couple of pages are a calendar that is going to be updated continuously as we keep moving forward week by week. So what's in there right now are just some highlights as far as keeping ourselves organized with our goals, the important dates, and then action items associated with it. So other than that, that's pretty much it.
It was great, Carolyn. Good job.
Yeah, I've read this when I got this on the email last night when I got home from one of my meetings. And when we got to the last 3 pages, and I bet Barbara's got a picture of this on her wall, so she knows what the deadlines are on all these things. And
Well, actually, I don't, because Carolyn is just a pleasure to work with, and it's on her wall, and
Okay.
she's taking care of her deadlines. I admit, we have multiple calendars and spreadsheets with tons of deadlines, and so we share those, but yes, I do have a number of calendars on my walls.
And of course, obviously, the way that you build something like this is you start on election day and work backwards. At least that's the way I would assume that you have to do
Yeah.
it. So. All right, any other questions or comments?
On the communication plan?
Yeah, on the communication plan? All right, what about, thank you, what about the business reply mail? Did we already sort of discussed that?
Or you said you went to the post office yesterday. Did you ask that question of them? I asked you yesterday. Remember I asked?
Yes, we did.
Okay, yeah, and I think I've been asking the same thing, and I
Yes.
appreciate Mr. Peterson putting it on the agenda. What'd you find out?
Well, Dennis and I met with the post office, and then Dennis has made some calls today to our printing and mailing vendor, and so he has some talking points for you.
Okay. This is basically the design of the return envelope that's been approved by the U.S. Post Office. You have to get your envelopes approved by them for purposes of identifying it as official election mail. Otherwise, they won't allow you to treat it as official election mail. So.
Cut off part, but okay, so place stamp there is where they do it when they wrap it. Yeah.
Correct. That's actually, that top white strip is a folding flap that folds over.
Right.
Yeah. In order to do business reply mail, which is one way to do this process of prepaying the postage, we have to redesign that envelope and get it approved again. And we're already having the envelope design final now. We're supposed to
Approve it on
Good Tuesday. So we have to start the process all over again to do this, which is to add business reply mail, add this, move things around so they work. They're talking about moving some coding that we have at the bottom. So it puts where we are at risk. Because of the
Yeah,
deadlines
that-
we have. But let me walk you, if you want to, if you have
No,
a
go
question,
ahead, go
okay,
ahead.
so there's some risk there. If we were to do that, your costs go up about $138,000 based on the estimates I was able to pull together. Because of the cost of postage, I wanted to compare notes with you
Oh.
on the cost of postage. I had 54.3 cents per piece. At 240,000 pieces, this is based on K&H's modeling. Then you have the permit fee, which is only $700. Then there's an upcharge for the printer because they're going to have to get off their print schedule to do a redesign through the post office and then go with new printing. And then we have to run those test envelopes through the sorter machine to make sure there aren't any changes there that we can't deal with. So I'm looking at my estimate, and again, this is just what we've been able to figure out today. So I don't want to tell you this is rock solid. It could go down, it could go up a little bit.
I thought business reply was for the ones used. That was part of the reason it was a little more expensive and there was a charge, not for the ones printed. It's for the ones that come back.
But I'm talking about their estimate was based on pre-printing postage, like,
When I
Yeah.
do a business reply,
Two
they charge me
different
for
things.
every one that is
Yeah.
used.
Yeah. No, you're right. I need to clarify because they gave us two options. One was to do metered or pre-applied postage. Right?
Right.
So,
Yeah.
and
That's
That's-
cheaper, but you pay for every one.
that's correct.
That's
I
just-
just
And it
want
might
people
be
to return
doable,
to
it might be doable, so don't write that off. You
Okay,
need to.
it's not what I was thinking, but that's
Right,
great.
okay.
The other is slightly more expensive, but do you want us to go through?
Continue.
But it is only done for the ones that are returned, and given, even with some hopeful estimates of what we get, it's a relatively small percentage, and it should be cheaper to say business reply. I'm just paying for the ones
Yeah.
that send in, not the ones that are
So it's
dropped in,
about
not the ones.
7,000 if we make an
Right.
assumption of 100,000 return.
So it's
So you
half.
got to guess, if we guess
Yeah.
half return, if it's less than that, then it's less per piece. I mean, it's
Okay,
less
so-
in total.
Yeah, help me with the numbers again. So we're going to mail out how many ballots?
208,000.
208. Great.
Well, it,
Or,
it's subject, we have an ordinance to make some minor tweaks. If you guys approve that minor tweak, you're looking at 210,000.
Probably
roughly.
210,000, and then how many, what's our best estimate of return based on what King County or wherever, what do we hope for?
The problem is that this is all brand new for us, so
Sure.
using King County or any of these other counties have been doing it for a while. They have higher returns because everybody's used to it and they buy it.
35% was the last.
But if
we
you,
got,
if you
right?
take a mail race at 35%, if you hope vote by mail encourages people, let's say you get to 45% first time out.
That's in the 80,000. And then how many in places that have done this, well, for, how many people drop it off? Is it 10%, is it 20% that don't use it but drop it
I have
off?
some just information on that. King County, that pink one that went flying around there,
Yeah.
that was a pilot project King County tried 2 years ago where they prepaid. And they, my understanding from the printer, and this is all just from the printer, so it's anecdotal to me, was that their information was that it, prepaying them didn't increase voter turnout because everybody was using the drop boxes.
So now
But
Dropbox
It's also not going
statistic.
to cost us very much then, if that's true. I mean, I get that, but if
Yeah.
that's true,
Yeah.
and particularly in the new one, everyone's like, I just would rather put it in the thing and see it, then it may be, what, you mean half?
I don't know.
So-
I don't know.
Here for the
You say
Washington
70%?
postal system. They drop
Denver.
it back.
Well, hold on, so,
Fine.
Barbara at a previous meeting had said 70% was what was returned on election day, or that was what actually dropped off on election day?
No, okay, so in Denver County, November 2016 election, 70% of voters in the whole election returned ballots by drop box.
Physically.
70%. And the calls and stuff that we're getting is people don't trust the post office.
Right, I think it's.
They don't trust the post office, and they're not happy that their signature is on the outside of the envelope. People think that that's an opportunity for identity theft.
Right.
So a lot of people do want to return them in the Dropbox because they trust us more.
But that's
But
fine.
then you have to still, they sign it and they put it, okay, well, if you did that and it was only 30%, then you're talking 24,000 ballots that get mailed back. I mean, if you just did back the envelope, you say you were gonna get 40%, okay, that's, gives us to about 84,000. Then you have 30% of that that are actually mailed, because 70% are returned in drop boxes. You're talking like 24, you're talking somewhere around 25,000 ballots that are mailed to us.
You said it's
pretty cheap.
57 once you do the 57 cents? Once you do the
50,
high?
I think it's 54.3 cents per
Still
piece.
54.3 times.
Well, then you're at $12, or $12,000, or maybe
Wait,
$15,000.
slow down, you're doing the math, I'm sure you're accurate, doing it too fast for me. So 210,000, if we get a 50%, slightly less than 50%,
I had it at 40%,
okay, he said 45. Anyway, I did
90,000.
we get 90,000 votes, that'd be great. And if instead of 70%, it's only half,
Okay.
I have 45,000 mailed at, I did 57, I don't know. what I
57 cents
said,
each.
is 25,000 bucks. So I came about to the same number you did. And if it's 25,000 bucks in the first try, and we remove an objection.
Barrier.
Yeah, a barrier objection. And then we can look at it after a while and say, it's, people are used to it, or we don't want to do it.
So is that, that 25, let's say it's even higher, let's say it's 30 or 40,000 to do
Right.
that. I still think that is worth doing. And my question is, does it require this redesign you're talking about, or are we talking
Yes.
about the, okay.
So you should
But
add in
there's-
about $7,000 roughly as a flat fixed
I think the money is
estimate
less.
for the admin
To me,
charges to do the redesign.
The money is less an issue now and versus the practicability of actually doing this.
Okay, so there's two issues that you have to hear about with business reply mail. Number one, we'll do whatever you want. Dennis and I are working this weekend. We don't know what we're working on, if we're working on an AO or if we're redesigning an envelope, but we'll do whatever you want. So we'll do that. But you have to hear the one problem, the biggest problem, I think, with business reply mail. Would you please tell them?
What do you think is the biggest problem?
That business reply mail is not postmarked.
Oh, yeah, that one.
Oh.
So,
Not postmark.
no, that's a big problem for us, because, remember, everything, that we drive the timeliness of the ballot return on that postmark, and they just don't have that capability to give us any indicia of postmark. Now, if you, I should have kept the envelope. If you look at a returned envelope, they're telling us that if it goes through their automated system, pretty much every envelope ever mailed will have this orangish, pinkish marker on the bottom of it. That indicates when it crossed that machine, but we don't have ready access to that data, and that's not the same as the postmark, because it could be days between when they actually gave it to the Postal Service versus when it's run through an automated machine, and not every piece goes through an automated machine. So that was the only thing they had for us as a sort of maybe, but it's got a lot of gaps in it. And so, knowing that yesterday to today, we don't have a workaround for you for the lack of postmark.
Yeah, that could be a deal breaker, because people, a lot of them have a tendency to wait till the last minute to vote, and, you know, they're used to voting on election day, and so.
Yeah, if we have a close election, you're gonna get a legal challenge. You have to.
How did they do it there then? That's got to be a problem for them too.
No, because those jurisdictions don't have the postmark requirement. Those jurisdictions have a returned on election day by. It's returned, it's received. So they've solved it that way.
Oh, no wonder, but that also means that our math might be off, because no wonder so many people go to the drop boxes then.
Well, we expect people to go to drop boxes because, in theory, the post office only guarantees a postmark if you make that collection box deadline 3 o'clock, usually 3:30, whatever it is. In theory, they guarantee that. But I know people have had experiences where stuff they've dropped in that collection box doesn't actually get postmarked. So if you're voting on election day, you're far better off finding a drop box
Yeah.
than hoping you get a postmark. Your only other choice is to do like people do for PFD. You go to the airport and wait in line.
And the other option of prepaid postage
Yes.
does get a postmark.
Prepaid postage, so now it's double the cost, but you get a postmark. So let Dennis talk to you now about prepaid
Or it's
postage.
way more than double the cost. If we think
It's-
we're gonna put posters on a bunch of things that are gonna.
We send 200,000 out.
So it's your 49 cents per 200 plus
It's a
thousand.
huge cost.
And you have spoilage because depending on how you do it, if it's metered with a label or it's a stamp, that creates more spoilage in the automatic presses. So you have to account for a little bit of that. And then to get the stamps versus metered, you have to get the post office to agree to give you 200,000 stamps to put in an automated system. They just don't do it anymore. And so the printer is saying, can't guarantee I'm going to be able to get that many stamps from the post office in time now at this late date. Can't guarantee how smoothly it'll work because we just don't do it anymore. And if there's any kind of an accident, if they have to reprint and restamp, they're probably not going to be able to do it.
Right.
Unless we over-ordered stamps to such a quantity to cover whatever failure there was. So
And we have to pay in advance.
if the boat sinks, the
No,
truck
Barbara, Amy's
crashes.
good, but can she stamp 100 letters with stamps? 200,000?
Well, the problem is it's all automated out of King County, so
Because it has to
it's
go inside the
Yeah.
outgoing.
envelope,
So what
so.
does King County do? They say the day of, or things we receive the next 2 days, or simply the day of,
Received
by midnight, whatever?
8 o'clock. Most, actually, they're not 8 o'clock. Most of them are like 7 o'clock. Received 7 o'clock PM election day.
So we need to change ordinance then?
Well,
Because ours says midnight right now, is that right?
no, it says postmarked, and the code says postmarked, so, you know,
Just to make this clear, the drop boxes close at 8, just
Yeah.
like the polling location
Right.
would. And then, of course, if you're postmarked in time. So if you miss the drop box at 8, run to the airport and get it postmarked.
In the old days, when the permanent fund dividend applications were due before 95% of people were doing them online, they would have postal employees, and there'd be a huge line out there. People would just like, April 15th to get their taxes
Right.
sent in on time. So, I don't know if we want to go down that road or not. We have to take into consideration, we don't want to put the entire election in jeopardy by trying to make late changes to.
so I realize the costs are very different, but the redesign of the envelope is so much greater with business reply mail. and that, you know, all of our outreach, all of the posters, everything we've done so far says postmark by Election Day, and now we wouldn't, so that concerns me. I think if we wanted to do prepaid postage, I realize there's going to be a lot of money that we're not going to use, but that makes more sense to me. The redesign is a little bit simpler. It's just adding a stamp to those envelopes.
Are we talking about a physical stamp, really, not a machine?
No facsimile or something.
Yeah,
just now.
everyone.
It has to be a,
Stamps.
well, that's what the problem, it
Yeah.
has to be a stamp. It can't be a meter strip. Has to be a stamp because otherwise it won't get postmarked.
I mean, the machine selects the postmark and stamps it,
There's,
post office.
on that envelope, we have the bars that are just to the left of the postage stamp, the one with the yellow highlighting. Either one of those. It's called a FIM, F-I-M. There's 4 or 5 bars there, Mr. Trainee, right there.
This is the film.
That tells it what kind of mail it is and whether it's going to apply a postmark or not, whether it's return mail or not.
Mhm.
And so, our understanding, based on what talking to the printers, you don't have a postmark without a stamp because it has a way of telling that there's a stamp there versus a metered mark.
So I'm going to just throw one more wild card out here, if I could. We have had a request which we haven't responded to, and maybe this could partially address this concern, Mr. Croft. And that is whether nonprofit organizations, churches, other groups can provide a stamp to voters. And the question is, you know, you're not supposed to provide something of value to someone in exchange for their vote. And I believe the former municipal attorney is familiar with this issue, and I think we've asked Dean about this issue, and perhaps that might be the way we need to encourage these organizations and say, hey, you can provide stamps to people. It's not a violation, because it's not a thing of value. That's would have to be the conclusion.
So we'd have to conclude that 49 cents is the minimus?
Well, it's not just that,
They
but
would.
49 cents that can only be used for this purpose. I mean, you're giving someone, I mean, I guess in theory, they could pocket the stamp and then go drop it in the box, but I think it's analogous to driving someone to the polls, right? It's a way to help them vote, not compensation for their vote.
Right, because they don't know how they voted.
Or they just bring them to church and the church takes them to the drop box. Or, I mean, those are different scenarios that you could
Yeah.
opine that that's okay.
Methods of delivering the person or the ballot
Yeah.
there are not considered value. They're
Right.
They're time-honored tradition, American politics.
Mr. Trainee?
Barbara, I appreciate how far we're into this system right now. From your perspective, it's better just go forward the way we're going now, and then take a look at after-action report. Maybe next election, we want to change to this, where we provide the stamp form. Are we so far into this process now that it makes no sense to try and change it?
Well, Mr. Trainee, I'll put it this way. It's a risk, and it's probably a big risk. And you could direct Dennis and I to do this weekend, and we could do our best efforts to do this. But it's a risk, and we do not know if our vendors or the post office could pull this off. If Dennis and I work on this weekend, we're not working on other things that we should be working on this weekend. Again, it's a risk. But, you know, I hope I've all told you before that you hired me to solve problems, and I'm here to solve problems, and if this is a problem you want solved, we'll solve it.
Maybe I just don't want to give you another problem on top of the other ones we give you, Barbara.
I think you have a difficult set of decisions here. There's all three are good and bad.
If I bring this into the post office, hand it to them, can they stamp it? They don't, the machine doesn't postmark it, but can they postmark it?
So if you went and waited in line and
Postmark
specifically asked the guy at the desk, can you postmark this?
Stamp it.
I don't know, I've never done that. Has anybody done that?
Yes.
Yeah,
It's not what
the
they're
hand
gonna do.
stamp. Is that what you,
Oh.
you mean that
Well,
particular piece?
Business
or-
reply.
Yeah.
It's a business reply, but I want to know. I don't want to do
I don't
anything
know.
that is
I
in
don't-
conflict with our postmark. And I think it's too late probably to change the rules. I wouldn't want to do it now. And I wouldn't want to make it irrelevant.
Yeah.
But it can be, you can say, look, we have provided this. Can I put my stamp over it? What happens if I decide I want to stamp?
I
it?
imagine they'll figure out some way to process it, even if you put a stamp over it, because I'm sure that happens.
But Eric, most people don't know that kind of stuff.
But in terms of, would they apply a postmark if you take it into them?
Making it too complicated.
But
I don't know.
then
I-
that becomes too complicated for the voter, because that's the whole point of it. is-
No, okay, you
Yeah.
guys getting ahead of me, but I'm slower than y'all. It just provides, if I'm worried about postmark, I can make sure it happens. If I'm not, I'm not.
Yeah, because it is true, like, if you were to drop it, if it arrives on or before election day, then the postmark becomes irrelevant. We
Sure.
could have non-postmark stuff.
Somebody does it quickly, wants to save the stamp, they just do it.
But I think that what we've seen in other jurisdictions is most people wait till the last minute, right?
That's
Yeah,
true.
we're anticipating, what we've been told is
Americans always
to,
wait till last minute.
we expect a spike, the day before and the day of election, and then, of course, whatever mailings come in based on postmark after that.
You expect to spike right when they get it, like the prompt people? No? People sit on it?
No, there may be a few people that just go ahead and vote it because it came in the mail today, but what we've been told to expect a spike, right before election day, so the day before, the day of election, because people procrastinate. So they go, oh man, I got to vote. I better do it today because I want to make sure it's done.
Well, I think also
And
the more charitable thing is some people actually wait to decide who they're going to vote for.
Yes, that's true too.
They
Wait to see if
do
their candidate slips up and change their minds.
And I noticed also that we still have the capability for people to request a ballot, an absentee type ballot for people that are snowbirds, so to speak, that they could request that their address here in town, the ballot not be sent there.
Right.
And it could be sent to Arizona or California, whatever.
Right.
So that capability is still in code.
This is, I'll just put out my sort of argument here, and then Eric can agree or disagree. I think we're pretty far down the road doing what we're doing. This is a multi-iterative game, right? So we are going to see what the impact this current reform will have this year, and then next year, it's true that it will be a non-mayoral, so there'll be other confounding factors, but we could go forward with one of these other two changes, either prepaid postage or business reply mail in 2019, and see if that helps further increase.
It would give us more time to plan. Mr. Green?
Mr. Chairman, thanks. I think we're just so far down the pike, as I said earlier, Barbara. We can't reverse this now. Just go forward with it. We can do an after-action report and come up with all the other ideas we haven't thought about yet that we're going to have for this election.
So, Mr. Chairman, so with all those, I think you're right on a business reply. So revisiting the prepaid, which is, I was thinking we are in the $60,000 to $70,000 of numbers and was willing to do that. And in fact, I heard lower numbers and that was great, and now I'm back to higher, 100 plus. 49 cents on 200 plus some redesign.
For prepaid, yes. Sir.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100,
Money.
110, 100.
Somebody has to actually stamp them.
Well, assuming we can get the volume stamps we want, for which we don't know yet, the printer has a way to automatically apply the stamps. Yeah, their biggest
You
concern is
can
they don't
get
know
them.
they don't know if they can get that kind of volume at this late date.
Nobody's ever come out.
It's actually-
200,000.
It's actually-
I want to wait in line.
I want them all to be
for that.
SpongeBob.
It's actually Dick Cheney's grandchildren. That's-
Thank you.
Because
For a fee, we will do it.
yeah, exactly.
Just wait in line, just and have the camera going so that when you ask the postal employee for 200,000 stamps, just to get the look on his face or her face.
You want that on a sheet of roll.
So,
Yeah.
what time is it?
It's
3:30.
3:20, 40, sorry.
Anything else? Questions or discussion about business reply mail on our agenda?
Nice idea, but I think we're too late in the process right now, Pete. Sorry.
No, not on that. Can I do one more other issue?
Sure. What else? What's next?
Ballot order, what flexibility do we have? What is mandated and what is up to our discretion? That is, I think the candidates have to rotate in certain ways, but can we choose which propositions and bonds we put in what order?
No, that's up to the clerk. Do not touch that, Eric. I'm just telling you, after 17 years of experience, leave the clerk alone.
We don't want to go there.
We don't get there.
I just have some information that's nothing to do with that, because the printer had said she'd try to get a hold of me if she had any new information or update information. So I just checked my email while we're talking. So this is what she says about stamps. USPS can take a credit card and ship for standard delivery of 7 to 10 days. Expedited shipment also available. You have to mail the order form and check 3 to 5 business days, plus another 5 to 7 days for processing and clearing of the check. And then the same delivery time frame on top of that. Orders of $10,000 or more require a signature when delivered, whatever. Oh, you have to sign for the boxes or whatever. Okay. So that just adds another
We did
interesting
that.
time
Yeah.
element in there.
Because we all had issues, we wanted the ballot first. But we've always left the clerk to determine on her own what order they're in. Barbara?
So, Eric, it's more art, I would say, than anything else. And Amy's laughing over there because I've asked her to get started on it. To some degree, our ballot, Dominion is the company that prepares our ballots. So what Amy's doing right now is she's pulled all of the props that you've passed and the proposed ones. And then we cut the proposition language and then we put it on the documents. And so the issues for us are, we have a little bit of science. And the one part of science is we want area-wide to be first. And the reason you want area-wide to be first is that if ARDSA was Prop 1, then you are an Eagle River resident and you get your ballot and it's Prop 2 and it's, oh my gosh, my ballot is wrong. And people notice that. So that is the first scientific part of it, is we try to do area-wide first. And then the other part really boils down to how long is it and how short is it. And if I can get this prop and these 2 props and have 1 page, instead of having this prop goes over onto the next page, then I have to have an extra page ballot. That's the art part. And so there's some science, but some art.
Are
And
bonds typically first or last? Or?
It's not necessarily bonds, it's like area-wide issues. And we already selected Prop 1, so we named the regulating locker rooms is Prop 1. And then sometimes the problem, because you guys write them, with the charter amendments is they have lots of text and struck through text and stuff like that. So we have sometimes put those at the end because we can, on the last page, we can go across all 3 columns instead of in a long column trying to read that.
So the proposition, the bonds, and the charter amendment are all just propositions?
That is correct. We try to make it somewhat logical so that people aren't mixed up. But I will tell you, we numbered number 1 because we thought it was better for it to have a number and for people to call it Prop 1 and know now rather than not to know for another couple of weeks until, it's February 2nd before the candidate closes, so people wouldn't know until after then what the prop number is. So we made a decision in consultation with the municipal attorney and Assembly Council to number that one Prop 1.
Anything else, Mr. Brown? All right, do we have any old business that we need to discuss or get covered today? I use not old business.
There was one more point, I don't know whether it's important to get on the record now, given where the committee is on this, but if it comes up, there is a code provision that was part of our process 2 years ago, talking about whether to pay for postage or not pay for postage. The code provision that we put in says that the municipality shall not accept ballots, collect on delivery, COD, or in any other fashion that requires payment by the municipality. So I think it would be important to check with legal to make sure that that doesn't prevent MOA from prepaying in any circumstance. It just means that we won't accept ballots from people that didn't pay for the postage if that was something they were responsible for. That was just one thing we'd want to make sure there wasn't any issue. And then the other one was, depending on what the funding looks like, if you went with stamp options or not, because we'd have to prepay some of that, you have to have a funding for it.
Right.
And if we had to put a lot of that on deposit, you'd have to make sure you had a funding source and take care of that issue, appropriation-wise. But that's norm. You guys understand how to do that.
Well, just the way you read that ordinance,
I tend to agree with you that it doesn't sound like it prevents me from prepaying, but the conversation we had at the time was, we're not going to prepay. So I tried to write this to give you flexibility. I think that was what I was trying to do here, is say, give you flexibility. If you decided later on to do it, you're okay, but I'd want to double check that with legal, that they were okay with that position.
so you think we should run that by Becky?
Well, we have a couple of things that we're working with Dean on your AO that's going before us, so we can make sure that Dean and Becky agree with that.
So to Mr. Croft's point, or Mr. Forrest's point, Mr. Bilmar's point, that if we need to make a code change now to anticipate paying postage later, we can just dress this up a little bit to make sure it's more clear.
Right. Okay, great, thanks for bringing that up. Anything from the audience? All right. Well, it was an excellent meeting today, and I think we're continuing to answer more and more of the questions that need to be answered for us to make this exciting vote by mail happen come April. And so I appreciate all the work, and we are adjourned.